The last two conditions are fairly straightforward, which is simply to add a collab and to delete a collab. As you remember, case 5 is to add and unlock. Here I want to do what I've done many times before, which is to create a new variable, the user response, which is equal to an input. And that input will be to type the name of the collab you want to add, and then to call a function, which will change the size of my data frame for the unlocks, because you're supposed to add one. And that new function will then be called add_collab, taking my user response as its argument, which hasn't been defined yet. First of all, I want access to the global variable no_unlock, because if you add your first collab, then right now no_unlocks is equal to true, but after adding it, it will now be equal to false, and I have to set that, because you now have a collab. And I need this global keyword in order to change the variable that exists outside the scope of the function, instead of just creating a new temporary variable. And as before, I need to check that my collab actually exists within all collabs, but before that, I want to check that I haven't already added it. So I don't want you to be able to add the same collab multiple times. Meaning if it exists within the df unlock collabs, the column collab, but not its index, its values, then I want to tell you, hey, you can't add this. You can't add the same collab twice. And then to give the user a bit of a help, I can say that you can use 3 to check your remaining collabs, or you can use 6 in order to remove some collabs. And then I want to return df unlock collabs. In other words, I haven't actually manipulated my data frame, so the output of the function is, well, the same thing. And I tried out some different methods to handle the return portion, and this is the method I found that made most sense to me, at least. Because this way, well, df unlock collabs has been changed, and when you call the function down here, I'm actually just saying that the data frame should be equal to itself, which means nothing has changed. And this might be expensive if you have a large data set, but in my case, it's okay. And if you haven't already added it, I want to check that it actually exists. So if it doesn't exist within df all collabs, and again the collab, not the index, but the values. So if it can't be found, that means, well, it doesn't exist. So you should be told that you made a mistake. So my collab can't be found, or I guess doesn't exist. And again, I want to give the user a bit of help to say, how can you figure this out? And again, I need to actually return something, which is again the unlock collab. And lastly, if else, now I have an else within an else. In that case, I need to create a new data frame, which is then my collab, and that will then be equal to the all collabs, where I want to filter it so that I only return those rows where the collab column is identical to the user response, but this will return 2 rows because I have duplicates. So I want to use head 1 to get only the first row. And then I can check that if no unlocks currently, and that's the global variable, if no unlocks currently is equal to false, which should be with capital letters. Since I already have rows, in this case, I want to append. So I don't just want to say that my collab right now only has 1 row. If I do have some unlocks already, then no unlocks is equal to false, which means that I need to append my collab to df unlock collabs, which I can then say that my collab should be equal to dd.concat, which will append, and that takes a list of the 2 data frames I want to append. So I'm now adding my collab to the end. And of course, if I do have no unlocks currently, then I only have the 1 row. So I don't need to change my collab since that currently has the only row I have. And then I can override my CSV file, and I have that from my file, yes, right there. And again, for me personally, I need a separator to be a semicolon, and I want index to be false. And this overrides the CSV. And then I need to set no unlocks, which is again the global variable. This needs now to be false in case it wasn't already, because I do now have at minimum 1 row. And then I can say, and that's not my collab actually. Actually, I don't want this to be my collab. I want my collab to be the data frame. So I want to change this to be user input. Say if user input can be found. And I don't want that there, but I don't want that there either. So my collab is now the data frame, and that is that. So user input is fine, and my collab is now the data frame. So here my collab becomes the data frame that is the 1 row where the user input is found. And that means down here, I can use user response or user input, I guess. So that was my attempt to reuse a variable, which ended up not working exactly as I wanted it. And then I want to return my collab because that's my data frame, meaning that df unlock collabs is now equal to the new data frame. And again, if I don't add anything, then the output will just be the data frame. And again, I don't know if this will cost anything because I'm saying that the data frame should be equal to itself. And I don't know if that actually changes anything, but that definitely solves my problem. And then there's one last thing to add, which is then the condition where I'm deleting it. And here I need to first check if I don't have any unlocks, because then I can't delete anything. So if no unlocks is equal to true, then I want to tell you, hey, you can't do this. In case you do have unlocks, and again, because this is a Boolean, I don't have to say elif. Then I want to once again ask you to type something. And before I go and make the actual function, I want to then check if my data frame, the unlock collabs, is empty. And actually that's not user response. That doesn't make sense. I am changing the value of df unlock collabs using this function, which takes your input as argument. So because df unlock collabs is now changed, I want to check if it's empty, which has a very convenient function. If it wanted to not be mad at me and not give me intelligence, then I want to say that no unlocks should be then equal to true, because I don't have any rows anymore. And then I want to inform the user of that, meaning I now have to go and make this function. I've chosen here to say that the output of my function should be the df unlock collabs as I did before with adding collabs, which means that when I don't remove a collab, I still have to return the data frame in an unaltered form. So that's a little something to keep in mind. Once again, I need to check if my user input can actually be found within the unlock collabs. And again, it has to be the values, not the index. And again, I'll be reusing the name myCollab as the data frame. If I can find the user input within my unlock collabs, well, then I want to remove it. I want to say that my collab should be equal to df unlock collabs, but a filtered version of it where I only want to return those rows where the collab column is not equal to my user input. So I'm just removing it, I'm filtering it out. And again, I need to then override my CSV file. And again, the separator for me personally needs to be a semicolon, and index is still equal to 0, or it's equal to false. And then I want to tell the user that you successfully removed the collab, and I can never spell success. And because my collab is now the new data frame, and because I'm setting the df unlock collabs variable to be equal to the output, that means my output needs to be my collab. But this is the condition where you can find the collab. In the condition that I can't find it, I then want to check if my user input can be found in all collabs. In other words, it is a valid collab, but it's not one I've unlocked before. I want to say if I can find it within the collab column, and again the values, then I want to inform the user that you haven't added this yet. And because I want the user input to be wrapped in the apostrophes, I need to say that my separator should be nothing. And then I want to return the df unlock collabs, which is then the global variable because I'm not altering it or anything. And again, I'll repeat that I don't know if this is actually costly, if it uses processing power to override a variable to be equal to itself. If it is, then I would definitely want to do something else. And in the last case, where I can't find user input in my unlock collabs and I can't find it within all collabs, well, then it doesn't exist, or there was a spelling mistake. And actually, I don't want a list of all my unlock collabs, I want a list of all collabs. So not number 2, because in this case you have misspelled it. So I can actually say up here, use 2 to get a list of all unlock collabs, and that needs to be inside. And then I can say like this. You can say, in this case, you made a misspelling, which means I want to show this actually. So not you can use 2 to get a list of all unlocks. I want to say you can use 0 to get a list of all collabs. And I don't want that on a new line. And again, I need to make sure to actually return something, which is just df unlock collab, i.e. do nothing. At this point, I can actually try running it properly, which means I can delete my unlock collabs file and now try running it normally. So if everything is all right, then this is fine and works as intended. If they show the name all collabs for all weapons, I'm going to add wrapdog, say add new unlocks. I want to add wrapdog, and then I can say show all unlock collabs. Well, I've added wrapdog. So if I try to remove an unlock and I spell this wrong, then it gets mad because I probably misspelled a function because I have it like that. But now I do have the file unlock collabs with wrapdog, so it does work to adding it. So I should also try to add a collab that doesn't exist. So I want to add wrapdog with small letters. Wrapdog doesn't exist. Did you spell it correctly? You can use 0 to get a list. And then if I try to add it twice, you can add the same collab twice. So that was this case. Already added it. No, I should try adding. Yeah, so I've checked all the 3 conditions for adding collabs. And again, I do have now one row wrapdog. If I try to remove collabs, and then say if you can, we check that last one, collab doesn't exist. Well, I can't find that collab to spell correctly. And then if it does exist, but I haven't added it yet, if I can spell lightning, so lightning wiener. If I try to delete that when I haven't added it, then it will say you haven't added lightning wiener to your list yet. Use 2 to get a list of all collabs. So get a list of all your unlock collabs and 5 to add it. So let me just add that. So now I can check my unlock collabs and I now have 2 wrapdog and lightning wiener. And if I then try to delete it, type in the collab you want to delete, and everything is fine. And if I then remove the last one, which means that down here, it will now check if my unlock collabs is actually empty, which it will be, then but no unlocks is set to true, and I will be told you've removed all unlocks. So if I try to remove them, I can't because you haven't added any yet. And check my unlock collabs, I haven't added any yet. Missing, you're missing all collabs. So everything is actually how I want it. And I don't think I've shown this last case either. So if you don't type a number between 0 and 8, then it will just tell you it doesn't know what you tried to do. So lastly, if I say 8, it will just close with no message. This is actually everything I wanted to do with this. And this is a full program. So if I try running it properly, you can do it like this in the command prompt. And of course I should add wrapdog. So now it works the way it is. The moment I hit enter, it will close. So this is the final product and it takes up a whopping 13.4 kilobytes. That is everything I wanted to show. So project over.